trend filming. Okay. Alright, it's January 2nd. I'm late. I'm gonna do my little wrap up of everything I read this year. Before I did this, I kind of had to like reinstall my personality a little bit. Watch some Haley Pham, love her. Watch some Seesop. If you don't know who that is, check him out. He's a small YouTuber. I would like to recommend that to all my 160 subscribers. Check him out. Probably never heard of him, but I'm a big fan. I was inspired by him, even though, you know, this isn't the most creative idea, but loved his video and I'm gonna do it now. I'm gonna say I read 37 books this year. Not the most. Good for me. I think 37 books is a solid accomplishment. Compared to the YouTube world, not that good, but hey. We're starting out bottom of the barrel. This is the worst of the worst. I read quite a few really bad books this year, and this one was the worst. I don't even have it on my shelf anymore because I own it. It's in the back of my car waiting to be donated. And this book was The Beautiful Ones by Silvia Moreno Garcia. This book was trash. I read Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia, and this book was genius. I loved it. It was addicting. It was 5 stars. I read this a few years ago, and I was like, this lady knows her stuff. She is so creative. So I picked up The Beautiful Ones, and the book let me down over and over and over. I don't want to go off on it too much because we've got a lot of ground to cover, but I will say boring, predictable, made no sense. It was magical realism, but the magic was totally useless the entire book. It was a romance, but I felt nothing. I felt hate in my heart as I read it, and it made me think that Silvia did not write Mexican Gothic. I think that her editor wrote this. It can't be the same person. I mean, I know we have our hits and our misses, sometimes we're one-hit wonders, but even the non-hits should be okay. You know what I mean? Enough about that book. That book stinks. Don't read it. Okay, number 36 on my list was... Where is that little shit? Did I also take it off of my shelf? Perhaps I did. Perhaps I did. Okay, I think it was also in the back of my car waiting to be donated to some poor soul. The Chill by Scott Carlson. Trash, dude. Trash. This book I read in an attempt to experience spooky season. The most scary thing about this book was the fact that I bought it full price from Barnes & Noble. Who does that without looking at Goodreads reviews? I was just reading the back book covers and then choosing a book. Basically, a reservoir was full of ghosts and water was the spooky part, and it wasn't spooky, and it was a big snooze fest. Enough said. Coming in at number 35, The House at the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. People loved this book. People loved it. And I wanted to vomit while I was reading this. It was sickly sweet. It was boring as hell. It was monotonous. It was preachy. The lesson in this book was we need to love others and accept others. And I mean, yes, I agree. I agree. But God, it was like the kid in Matilda that had to eat the whole cake. It was so overly sweet and lovely and cute, and oh, they're so cute. Oh, we love all the little kids that have all their little quirks. Vomit. All right, we gotta move on. Number 34, A Woman Is No Man by Itaf Ram. I have this one. Not so bad that I had to throw it off the shelf. This was a novel that would have been way better as an essay. It's about a Palestinian American woman. The woman that writes this is Palestinian American, and she's making commentary on the struggles of being a woman in Palestinian American society, specifically in Brooklyn, New York. This is interesting in the way that you get a glimpse into this woman's opinions and some harsh realities, but it was so overly explained. It was like the characters were just a mouthpiece for this woman. You should have just written an essay. No need to make it fiction. The book sucked. Okay. Number 33. Okay, so we've moved on from books that I hated. I only hated just a few. 33 is low, but that's just because I've read a lot of books. I try to keep the books that I read pretty good, so hopefully most of these are good, even if they're pretty low on the list. Number 33 was The Black Queen by Jumada Emil. This is a young adult mystery. The mystery was interesting. Again, a little preachy, and I think that annoys me in books. I don't like when books are preachy. I love it when books have a point. I love it when they're saying something, and I think that fiction can do that so well, but sometimes it can't, and sometimes it's preachy and it sucks. And I think that the mystery was fun, but the preachiness about racial tension was not good. Sorry. Number 32 was One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This book was okay. Alright, it was okay. It was a fun romance I read to kind of get me out of a reading slump, and it worked. But compared to The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, which is the other book that I've read by her, that was her shining star, amazing, and I want to read more by her. One True Loves was an earlier work, and just not as good, just kind of silly. Hey. I'm not a big romance fan, so take that with a grain of salt. Okay, number 31 was The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. Another young adult book I read because there was so much hype around it and I wanted to see if I liked young adult. I was open to it and it just disappointed me. I thought it was really boring. I didn't think it was well written. I was like, this is what the hype is about? I thought it was just really weirdly paced and kind of just not confusing, but just a bunch of fluff. I kind of got the world, like I understood that I don't know. Who cares? Just not memorable, whatever. I don't get the hype. People are really like, I love Holly Black's writing. She just can really build a world. And I just thought, I disagree. Number 30 was Last Days by Adam Neville. I also read this to get into spooky season. Definitely did a better job. This book started off really strong, but it just kind of petered out. That's why it's kind of lower on the list. I think like this much of the book was good, and then it was really repetitive, and I got kind of bored, and the ending was like, all right. He could have just cut a ton out. It's scary, and then you see it too many times, and I'm not scared anymore. Number 29 was Embers. I read this because it was set in Vienna. Watch my last video. I wanted to read a book set in Vienna. It was not bad, just a little boring. Just a little boring. Number 28, I DNF'd this. I didn't finish. I'm gonna put it next to Embers just because these kind of went together in my head. This was also set in Vienna. This is a memoir by Stefan Zweig, a man who grew up in Vienna in the early 1900s. I read a little bit of it. I think that it probably does a really good job of capturing the time period, but it's a little long, like a little boring. Hey, I DNF'd it, but I'm including it anyways because Seesaw included stuff he DNF'd, and I thought that was pretty cool. Like, you can still judge a book, and I can still talk about it, okay? There's no rules. Oh, that was called The World of Yesterday. Did I say that? 27 was The Tiger's Wife. When I originally read this, I gave it 4 stars, but it's one of those where I'm looking back and I don't know exactly why I did. I kind of was interested as I was reading it, but to be honest, this book kind of made no sense to me. I wasn't getting it. Like, I understood what was happening. It's not like I'm dumb, but I didn't get the point of the book, and I think that there was a point, it went over my head, and I couldn't really tell you what the plot was. So okay, 26 was Lock Every Door by Riley Sager. Riley Sager does what he does, He writes a fast-paced thriller, isn't necessarily realistic, isn't necessarily free of plot holes, but it's fun, And it did what it did, and it does what it does, and it do what it do. Who is Maud Dixon? Oh, who is Maud Dixon? This was fun. This was kind of same dealio as Lock Every Door in feeling, but slightly more fun. I read this in Morocco because it's set in Morocco and I have a video about that. I liked it a lot, but just not like high quality literature. Super fun mystery, adventure, and some crazy twists. Number 24, 5 Tuesdays in Winter by Lily King. This is a short story collection by Lily King. I adore Lily King. I've read Writers and Lovers and The Pleasing Hour, and she blows me away. These just kind of fell flat for me. I was a little disappointed, but still really good writing. Some of them were more interesting than others. Maybe I just don't like short stories. I don't know. Sometimes when I love an author, it's like, I can't say you were bad, but you're just a little bit bad. All right, moving on. Oh, 23 was The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. I enjoyed this book. It was sci-fi, and I can totally see why people like it, and I did like it. I think I gave it 4 stars, actually. I liked it when I read it, but I just don't think it's super my style. There's more in the series, and as I, sat with it, I thought I might read the rest, but I don't think I will, just because in a world where there are so many books to read, this just isn't my favorite kind of book, because it almost felt like Star Trek episodes. Each chapter or section was kind of about this other little adventure that this ship went on, and it's fun little bite-sized pieces of candy. We're going on adventures, but it didn't feel important to me. It felt kind of like watching TV. And when I read, typically I like to get something out of it. Whatever. Not always, but you know what I mean. Whatever. I did like it though. I mean, it's 23. It's 23. I enjoyed it. I had fun. Okay, 22 was The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. Totally worth reading if you like young adult. I liked it. It was fun. Again, just maybe not my taste. I'm not closing myself off to young adult, but I think most young adult is just not going to do it for me. I also thought that the romance in this book was lifeless. I just didn't care about it, but I liked it. But I liked the book. You know what I mean? Okay. Number 21 was Traveling Mercies by Anne Lamott. This is a memoir slash... it's like subtitle is Some Thoughts on Faith. So it's just like a ponderation, if you will. What's the word? A pontification upon faith and what it means to Anne Lamott. She's an essayist and a writer on Christianity. I just thought that some of it was like, could have stayed in the diary, not that groundbreaking, but overall I really enjoyed it. And I'm glad I read it. Number 20 was Such a Fun Age by Kylie Reed. I enjoyed the story. It said some things about Black womanhood in America that I appreciated and I liked. Yeah. Tiny Beautiful Things by Cheryl Strayed. Where are you, Cheryl? Where are you? Oh, this was Traveling Mercies. Tiny Beautiful Things by Cheryl Strayed. This is a collection of response columns or whatever they're called, where someone writes in to the person and they write back in the newspaper. This was a thing that she did, Cheryl Strayed. She worked and wrote for this column called Dear Sugar, and this is a collection of her best advice, basically. And these are some really beautiful stories. Some of these are so moving, and her advice is rich and honest. She has a lot of personal stories. It kind of turns into a memoir of her life because it covers so much of her own trauma. You know, like her mother died, and she had a divorce, and she hiked across the country. If you've seen or read the movie, or book, what's it called? Frosted, Bound, Lost. What am I thinking of? Across, what's it called? Wild. If you the book Wild, she also read that, which was a big hit. Anyways, this is beautiful. This is like little advice columns, little slices of life, and people are going through some things all over the world, and you kind of get to be empathetic. You know, it kind of opens up your heart a little bit. Hey, and you know, that feels good sometimes. That feels good. Number 18 was Beautiful World, Where Are You? By Sally Rooney. It's kind of one of those books that you could criticize because it maybe doesn't have a plot, but one of the books that I kind of like that does that. There are some books that can get away with it when the writing is really beautiful, the characters are really good. Not good in the sense that you have to like them. Some of them are very unlikable. I think that Sally Rooney does a good job with writing realistic characters that feel real things that you can relate to, but you don't necessarily want to relate to. And, you know, they have bad communication and stuff like that, like just messy people things. She's good at that. And I really liked it. She's also known for not using quotation marks, which I am not a fan of. I think Sally Rooney, that's a little bit pretentious of you, but we forgive you because her writing is really good. Where yet? Number 17 was Replay by Ken Grimwood. This was a book I found on Reddit searching. Did I just send fur everywhere? Okay. This is a book I found on Reddit. This was a book I found on Reddit, searching for books that were kind of underrated. It's a book about a man who dies at like 45 and then goes back in time to being 19 again and gets to relive his life over and over. Every time he dies, he goes back. It's like the boy version of The Secret Life of Addie LaRue, if that makes sense. I don't know why, but I just feel like that's true. It's kind of like this what if story. What if something crazy like this happened? It has like that time travel aspect and the living of multiple lives aspect, but this overarching really good story where things don't always turn out exactly how you expect them to, and there's this grappling with love and life in a world that is kind of infinite in a way. Like, how does that work? Yeah, kind of similar to The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. Did I say Secret Life? The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. But the boy version. And you just have to read it to know what I mean by that. Okay, 15 and 16 I'm putting together. I just read The Horse and His Boy and Prince Caspian by C.S. Lewis. I read them as a kid and I was just rereading the series and I really like those books. I think that they're super sweet. They're very nostalgic for me and I just like them a lot. Okay, 14 was Commonwealth by Anne Patchett. This is another one that is just like a little bit plotless. It has a plot, okay? It's got a plot. But it's mostly like messy people and their messy lives, rich with emotion and character. I like books like that. It spans the lifetime of these kids that grew up in a broken home. It says a lot about family dynamics and divorce and the repercussions of, you know, these kids' lives kind of being all out of whack, and it's messy. I don't know. I liked it. Number 13, If He Had Been With Me by Laura Nolan. This was a young adult book I read in my young adult book video that I adored. I loved it. I felt like a teen again reading this book. If you don't like young adult, maybe don't read it. I also thought I didn't like young adult though, and I loved it. So I don't know what to say about that. It had me giggling, feeling like a teen again, just like, you know, that feeling, and I did not expect to feel that, you know, as a 26-year-old woman. The Inheritance Games romance did not make me feel that. Cruel Prince did not make me feel that. This made me feel that. Like, it was so cute, and obviously it's on those, like, books that break my heart lists, so be prepared, but, like, just so cute and so well done. I was really impressed by this. Like, I felt like a teen in the best way. Okay, number 12 was Fleishman is in Trouble. This is also a Hulu special, which if you don't want to read the book, just watch it because it's also directed by Taffy Brodesser, whatever her name is. Taffy Brodesser Anchor, also directed by her, and so the dialogue is really similar and they do a really good job with it. But I enjoyed reading it and watching it. This is so good. To counterbalance A Woman Is No Man, this is its opposite. I said that this was a fiction novel that should have been an essay. This was an essay that did so well as a fiction novel. She is saying stuff with this book, and my God, does she do it well. This follows a man who has just been divorced. The divorce is like his undoing, and he is trying to figure out, like, pick up the pieces and make life work again. And it sucks, and you just feel for him. And, like, his wife sounds like a freaking biatch, if you know what I mean, his ex. It encapsulates why relationships fall apart. Even though it's from the perspective of the man, it encapsulates what is so hard about modern womanhood really well. Especially in New York. You know, I'm not going to say I relate to everything in this book because I definitely do not, but it tells a certain perspective. It tells a couple certain perspectives, opposite perspectives really well. Like, it covers the breakdown in communication and why relationships are so hard. And I won't tell you much more than that. I think this is a book you just have to read to experience, to come up with your own thoughts about. Because it's not preachy. Like, you will think your own thoughts about this, which is what I love when fiction can do that, when it has something to say, but you get to contribute your own thoughts, you know? Like, you get to think about these characters. You're not spoon-fed everything. I don't know. You know what I mean? You know what I mean by that? Not preachy, but has a freaking point, bro. It packs a freaking punch. Okay, number 11 was Angle of Repose by Wallace Stegner. This won a Pulitzer Prize. It's kind of old. I think it was written in the 70s, and it's really long, but it's my kind of book. I would not recommend this to everyone. You have to really like to read a book like this. But it's big and grand, and I feel like it feels like a classic novel. It's from the perspective of this woman who follows her husband from New York to the Wild West, as it were, to the frontier. He's an engineer in the mines, and she follows him, and it kind of just follows their story of hardship. It tells the story of, like, the highs and lows of their marriage, and it just has some of the most beautiful descriptions of emotion and also beautiful descriptions of the setting, because we are in, like, the mountains of Colorado and we're in Mexico at one point, and it's just beautiful. It's beautiful, but it's a big undertaking. You're not gonna read it fast, okay? It's gonna take a while. Okay, number 10 was The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. J.R.R. Tolkien. Oh. I mean, it's Tolkien, bro. It's the freaking Hobbit. I will say this book took me a long time to read. I was listening to it on audiobook, but it's so good. It's a classic. It's amazing. It's timeless. It's trend-setting. It's beautiful. I just have so much respect for Tolkien. Loved it. But it did take me a while to read. Number 9 was Sorrow and Bliss by Meg Mason. I loved this book. The thing about this book is it stuck with me. I think about this book often. And it's rare that a book will do that to me where I think about it. I have gone back to this book in my head so many times for so many reasons. This is another one which is just my favorite genre of literature, which is messy relationships and like just the grittiness of humanity, of like what is in our souls. We're not perfect. We do mean things to people. Our relationships are difficult, and things aren't always sunshines and rainbows, but sometimes they are sunshine and rainbows, and that's what Sorrow and Bliss is about. It's literally about the highs and lows of life. It tells it in the most unique and interesting and beautiful way. She thinks thoughts that I have never thought before. Like, it made me reread that line and go, whoa, that was so interesting. Like, that was such an interesting way to think about things. I have not read a book like this before. Something about it was very one of a kind. And I come back to some of the like sentences that I read, and I think about them again. It's a book that will have you annotating. Loved it. Loved it. Number 8, we're really counting down here. Number 8 was And Every Morning the Way Home Gets Longer and Longer by Fredrik Backman. Fredrik Backman is another very unique writer. He's Swedish, I think, and his books are translated from Swedish. And this is a little short novella by him about dementia, about this grandfather and father, well, a man who's a grandfather and a father losing his memory. And oh my God, it's beautiful. It's beautiful and poignant. It sticks with me again. It's something that sticks with me. The brevity of this novella adds to its poignancy. It was so rich in such a small package, and it was beautiful, and I highly recommend you read it, especially if you have a grandparent or someone in your life that you've seen them kind of lose their memories and their personality a little bit. Like, it speaks to that so beautifully, and it'll make you cry, but in a good way. Number 7 was My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. It's about a girl who is groomed by her teacher and ends up in a relationship with a 45-year-old man and refuses to come to terms with the fact that it was abuse. And it just does it so well. Like, this book legitimately made me cry. It's in this video here. I cry. I'm in the thumbnail crying about it. It covers this subject of pedophilia and grooming, and it feels like it does it in a realistic way. I don't know how she managed to do that. I'm a little bit concerned. But it felt complicated and heart-wrenching, and sometimes you feel like you can't even root for her as a main character, but it's so real in that sense. It's like, you know, we're not always gonna get it right. And I don't know, like, her struggle with, is she a victim, is she not a victim, it's so interesting. And also just couldn't put it down. Highly addictive book. Okay, number 6 was everyone's favorite, Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. You know it, girl. It covers friendship and love and video games, and it was amazing. It was amazing. Super creative. Again, love just characters that aren't perfect and don't freaking get it right. Love that. Number 5 was a kind of a little surprise for me this year. I read it recently. It's called Gift from the Sea by Anne Mara Lindberg. This book freaking knocked my socks off in the most unexpected way possible. This is a book written by a woman in 1955, I believe. A woman who is, I don't remember exactly, but she's an aviator who is like the first woman to get some sort of pilot license. I don't remember, okay? Hold on. I don't know. But she's the first woman to do all these plane things, right? Which is crazy. She's in 1955. She's flying planes. And she is the wife of Charles Lindbergh, who is another super famous aviator. But she is, in her own right, doing things, writing things. She's a housewife as well. So this is a book. She left her life, left her family for 2 weeks, and went to an island and wrote this book. And it's kind of this pontification on womanhood in the modern era, 1955, but it manages to be so timeless and so beautiful. It was astounding. It's like about just the life of being a mother and a wife. But she's not just a mother and a wife, obviously. She has all this accomplishment under her belt, but she kind of has all these discoveries and realizations while she's out by herself about life and about family and about cutting things out that you don't need and ridding yourself of distractions and loving your husband for who he is in that moment. And it's just, I mean, I won't say it's just for wives and mothers, but as a wife, it was more poignant. I think that there's a stage in your life when you can read this and it just means a lot, and it was really beautiful. And the fact that it's written in 1955 and is still relevant today says a lot, okay? Loved this book. Number 4, I am in the middle of reading Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver. And it is quickly becoming one of my very favorites. It's a book about a boy in Appalachia and his life, and I'm loving every minute of it. I'm gonna finish it, and so maybe things will go haywire in the last half of the book. But right now it's number 4 on my list. Like, I am loving it. It's so well written, totally deserved the Pulitzer Prize. It's written like it's from the perspective of a not very educated Appalachian boy, like a little boy, and at the same time it's so poetic and beautiful. It's amazing how she manages to do that, have that cross section. It's tackling huge subjects like the coal miner uprisings that happened in the time and labor unions and the opioid crisis in such a nuanced, a nuanced way, but it's like from the perspective of someone who is living it and like is a kid and doesn't totally get all these subjects. I don't know. I feel like I'm not even doing it justice. Book's great. Number 3, this was the first book I read of the year, and it was Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. I wish I owned this book. I borrowed it from the library and I want to own it. I love recommending this book because I feel like anyone would love this book. It's sci-fi. I literally never read sci-fi, and this book, I mean, it's number 3, y'all. It's number 3. Whenever I think about it, I like get the sense of adventure that I had when I was reading it. It's such an adventure. It's about this dude. He wakes up out in space in a spaceship and he can't even remember his name. He doesn't know why he's here. He has total memory loss and he's slowly remembering things over time. But basically it's him alone out in space trying to science his way out of these situations, and it's so fun. I read it so fast. I was on an adventure. I was in another world. I was not in my living room. And it's so rare when you have that reading experience. Like, that is what I'm always chasing. That's not what I'm always chasing. Sometimes I'm chasing like literary excellence and just to have read something to improve myself. This wasn't that, but it was that reading experience where you're just in the world. In it. I'm not anywhere but there. Okay. Number 2 was more that second kind of reading experience, which was East of Eden by John Steinbeck. Classic, y'all. Oh, here it is. It's big, but it's just got so much in here. Even at 600 pages, I don't feel like it was slow paced. I don't feel like it was kind of one of those antiquated classic novels that you kind of have to slog through, but you get the point. I feel like it had points and it had all the high school things. It had themes that you wanted to write essays about, but it does it really like fun. Like, I would say this is, well, not fun, but interesting, like so unique and interesting, and it's just a classic novel that you gotta read, y'all. And number 1 on my list, my favorite book of the year, was Gilead by Marilynne Robinson. I loved this book. I loved it. This book is written from the perspective of Reverend John Ames, who is this old pastor, and the book is his letter to his young son, trying to give him all his life wisdom before he dies, because he knows that he's nearing the end of his life, and his son is pretty young, and he won't really get to know his dad. And so this is him trying to tell him who he is, tell him about his family history, tell his son what to think of life, and it's beautiful, beautiful. This book changed me. It has some of the most beautiful, poignant passages in it that I had to write down. It talks a lot about God and faith, but in some really interesting ways that I think even non-Christians, but people who are interested in the ways that you can view life and the ways that you can theologize, what am I saying? In just theological discourse, people who are interested in that, they would like this. It's heartwarming and heartbreaking and absolutely changed me. I can't recommend this book enough. I love it. I love it. I love it. Gilead by Marilyn Robinson. That concludes my video. Hopefully I can edit this down to be something worth watching. That was my year.